Hi, and welcome to the Skincarma Pod. I'm Carmine, the creator and voice of the Skincarma blog. With more than 25 years in beauty, as a brand builder, copywriter, and skincare junkie, I'm putting my product wisdom and expertise to work demystifying skincare. Today's episode starts with a deceptively simple question. What if the beauty industry has been thinking about skin all wrong? Because for decades, skincare has largely focused on what we do to the skin: lasers, acids, retinoids, devices, procedures, topicals, all those serums and moisturizers, all of it designed to stimulate, resurface, or correct from the outside in. But what if one of the missing pieces of skin health has less to do with stimulation and more to do with healing? My guest today believes that skin cannot truly repair, regenerate, or recover without the proper internal support, and that some of the most important lessons about skin health may not come from the beauty industry at all, but from surgical recovery, burn units, and critical care medicine. Joining me today is Dr. Kami Parsa, a board-certified oculoplastic surgeon and founder of Mendora Health. After a hand injury sent him down a deep research rabbit hole into nutrition, wound healing, and tissue repair, Dr. Parsa began rethinking the role that internal health plays in recovery, not just after surgery, but in skin health more broadly. That perspective became profoundly personal when, while developing his healing protocols, Dr. Parsa unexpectedly underwent open heart surgery himself, ultimately becoming the first patient to apply the very principles he had spent years researching. In today's conversation, we'll explore the biology of healing, the relationship between inflammation and aging, why modern skincare may be overly focused on external intervention, and how nutrition, recovery, and skin longevity may be far more interconnected than we realize. So, when the surgeon becomes the patient, what changes about the way we think about healing? Let's find out. Let's welcome Dr. Parsa to the pod. Dr. Parsa, hello.
Hi, Carmine. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be
Oh,
here.
I'm excited to have you here. Welcome to the Skincarma Pod.
Thank you. Yeah.
I like to start in the same place with all of my guests with a bit of your origin story. I know you've spent decades as a surgeon, like working on the most delicate structures of the face, the eye area, but your path into nutrition and internal healing didn't start there. What did you originally think you were going to do, and how did you ultimately find your way into oculoplastic surgery?
Yeah. It's interesting because I grew up in Northern California, and when I was a kid, my dream was to become a pilot. That's what I thought I'm going to do,
Wow.
or like a flight, test pilot or something like that. So I actually went to college with an aeronautical science engineering degree. That was my degree at UCLA.
Mm.
And at the same time, I was going to flight school, trying to get my hours going. And when I and this is how life kind of ends up. When I was at UCLA, I had to take, you're supposed to have full-time classes, and the only class that would fit my schedule was this biology class.
Mm.
And I had biology before when I was in high school, and I hated it. And I said, you know what? I have to take this class, or I won't be a full time. So ended up taking this class that the teacher, Dr. Ikondo, there was this incredible, like warm, kind, and the way he taught was from this just like spiritual sense. I've never had, biology, if you think about it, is a very, pure memorize. You have to memorize a lot of names, scientific names. So that part of it was boring, but he made it feel just incredible, like this story about life and the meaning of life. So I said, you know what, this is going to be my calling. I forget being a pilot. I want to go learn about biology and become a biologist. So I went to my counselor. I said, you know what, I'll do the degree in engineering, but I also want to look at maybe doing a double degree or something in biology and perhaps go become get my PhD in there. So I did that. And as you know, a lot of pre-med students are biology majors. So a lot of students that I was taking classes with, um, they were studying for the MCAT and going to medical school. So some of my courses during that time, I said, you know what? Some of my friends said, I'm studying to go to medical school. There's this thing called the MCAT. You should look into it maybe. And I said, okay, well, maybe I'll go take the MCAT and go to medical school. And that kind of flipped the whole script on being a pilot. And I did well on MCAT and ended up going to USC for medical school. So that's how
Oh,
the
wow.
life turned. Yeah. So basically, when I was at USC, um, USC is a level 1 trauma center, so they do a lot of trauma cases and things like that. So I at first wanted to be a neurosurgeon. And
Oh my God.
yeah,
Wow. What?
and here's the other part of the story is because um, the person that, so I was told that, okay, you can have this mentor, they assign a mentor that are already attending surgeons, and you should hang out with them, do some research with them during the first year of medical school. So I did. And the person they assigned to me was this very unhappy, going through it, just was not a good person, was unhappy. And so every time I hung out with him, I said, okay, this guy is not what I want to be. He's unhappy. He's overworked. He's not enjoying what he's doing. And he's mean to the people, that he doesn't give love, like show love to the people around him. And people were scared of him. So anyways, so that changed that path quickly. And then I hung out with some ophthalmologists, which were the happiest people and doctors in the hospital. They were just, they, they they were kind, and I said, you know what, this is microsurgery, I enjoy it. So then that's how I went to ophthalmology, did my residency. And then it's interesting that how plastic surgery came about, because during that time at USC where I was doing the residency, again, we saw a lot of trauma cases. And what was beautiful about putting people back together, which is what we were doing, doing surgeries like that, was that I said, plastic surgery maybe is my calling. So I then went on to get my fellowship in oculofacial plastic surgery. So that's how basically the journey kind of ended. And I think the lesson over there is that, like, look, I planned that I was going to be a pilot all my life, and it didn't
Yeah.
happen. And I went
Yeah.
and examined it, and a great mentor kind of changed that forever in that sense. And then the wrong guy pushed me away from it. I'm sure if the neurosurgeon was someone who was, different and liked to teach and everything, my life would have been different. And that's the beauty of life, is you just kind of take it as it happens, and you kind of have to different things that you just have to go with the flow sometimes, and it's how it is. So
The
yeah,
easy path is the one that flows, is the one that gets you to where you're meant to be, I think, right?
100%,
And I
100%.
love that. I love that you brought up the point about the those influences and how much influence a single teacher could have, because I wouldn't be a writer today if it weren't for the most inspirational teacher of my youth, and that was my English teacher in 10th grade. She's the one who made me feel like a whole human being. And everybody else didn't understand me. I didn't understand me. I mean, I hated my name, as crazy as that sounds. And she was amazing, and she was so inspiring, and she always made me she made sure that I felt like I was the most important student in the class.
Isn't
And
it?
I don't know if that's to the detriment of the other students, but I really idolized her. And yeah, I mean that's when my path was set. And you and I think we both would acknowledge that we're lucky to have found something we're passionate about. Doesn't it make you sad when you like see someone in a job that isn't passionate about what they're doing and they're so clearly not into it?
100%, 100%. And as you said, a teacher has a big role in that. And, obviously inspiring curiosity, that's like very
Mhm.
important to be able to like say, look, you being like, able to open a door that you walk into and you say, wow, this is just amazing. This makes me want to show up here and do this. And writing, or obviously writing and poetry, music, anything. There are a lot of different things that have that connection and that fulfillment that brings, these types of things bring. 100%. I think
Yeah.
on a daily basis, look, I do my gratitude every day, and I feel very blessed to be, you know, to have had all the struggles and all the different good things that has happened. And I feel very blessed on that fashion, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally feel that. And I love that you kicked this off with that focus on a seminal moment, or, a moment that's an inflection point when you think back on your history. And I think the next inflection point that I want you to expound on is what I would frame as the finger injury that started everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
As crazy as that sounds.
Yes, it is. It's crazy. Well, just a little background
Yeah.
on before I get to it, but 100%. Um, I would say that most of my so I finished my fellowship at Bascom, and I moved to Los Angeles, where one of my friends was a plastic surgeon, and he goes, "Look, come and join my practice. We can kind of I'll show you what you need to do." And I started doing a lot of cases with him and different people, and I was this is a portion, and I would say the first maybe 18 years of my career that I was, this is post fellowship, right? Was so focused purely on mastering my surgical techniques. Like I felt like, look, if I'm going to be the best surgeon in the world, I better watch how everybody else does it. What you do, what are the techniques everyone's doing? How can I learn to do this better? And that was an obsession of mine to be that. And that was like the answer to everything. And it wasn't until, and I will promise you, this is actually a very, most surgeons see it this way. They say, okay, in order for them to be a good doctor, good provider, good surgeon, they need to that mastery. So what happened was a few years ago, as you were saying, the finger injury was a turning point. And yeah, I was playing catch with my son, and I got what we call it. So I got a mallet injury, which means this finger, which is my non-dominant finger, that I tore up the interphalangeal ligament here, and so the finger was permanently in this position, so I couldn't move it. So I went and saw a couple of my buddies who are hand surgeons, and they both said, "Look, you got to put some pins here. You can't operate for like a month or 6 weeks, and you need to take some time off." And I said, so I thought about it. I said, "Look, this is my non-dominant hand. Are you sure? I don't think I can take time off from work. I gotta work." And um, at that point, I was working like I was like so involved in my just constantly surgery was everything. And it is
Yeah.
still is, but I will show you. I mean, we'll go through the perception. Like the perception is different. So I ended up, I said, look, why don't I do some research on this thing? I mean, I trust these guys, and, I can understand how did they used to treat these things. So I ended up coming across an article that said, look, 100 years ago, the way they used to treat the mallet injury was that they would hyperextend it and put two popsicle sticks, and they would wrap it. And the trick was that you were supposed to keep it you couldn't move it even a millimeter. And if you did, you had to start from day one again, because you
Mm.
have to give time for things to heal. So I ended up putting a popsicle stick, wrapping it with paper, and I would tell patients, "Look, this is I'm fine. We can do your surgery," and nothing happened. But I was very meticulous on that. But I wanted to make sure that how do I expedite this healing? Because most of the literature said that, look, you got to leave this like this for like 5, 6 months, and so that that injury led to me started a rabbit hole deep dive into how can we expedite healing, what are the things I can do to make this heal better. And so that opened up a door into and central to everything I read, everything I was reading, and this is years of decades of published data on this stuff, was nutrition. And it was
Mm-hmm.
something that I didn't expect, that nutrition was going to be a big part of this journey. But the more and more I read about this stuff, the more I realized that this is what we got to do. So I cleaned my diet, changed the way um, I ate. I started taking certain, so based on, for example, what are the things you can do to improve the healing? So protein was part of it, vitamin C was part of it, bunch of different antioxidants, combination of things, arginine, glutamine, all these things that I was bringing into work, and so that led to me saying, look, we got to bring this to my practice. So long story short, my finger ended up healing after 6 weeks, which was incredible. And I didn't have to have a pin there. And I said, and the way I really think about this, Carmine, is like, do you remember the Matrix, when Neo like walks in and sees all these like binary codes going through? It was like
Yeah.
really something that, because look, nutrition is not taught in medical school the way it should be.
Yeah.
I personally, and this is obviously 30 years ago, only had 2 weeks of nutrition, so that's not enough. And so when medicine in general is so focused on treating disease that we forget, like, look, food is medicine, and
Food always was medicine.
has always been,
Yeah.
if you look back 200-300 years ago, if someone
Yeah.
had some sort of an illness, they would say, look, eat this thing, eat this
Mm-hmm.
spice, or this homeopathic thing. And but so that became something central, and it allowed me, when you get into the biology of these things, it's just incredible, that process. So I said, okay, what can we do? Why don't we start making every surgery patient I have, they have to go through a new kind of a diet, put them on a specific diet, which includes everything I did for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then people were saying, and then we were giving them all these supplements to take. I That whole process that I did ultimately became. I talked to a couple of my patients who were incredible, like nutritionists and cooks, and I said, look, why don't we put together a book which has like 100 easy recipes, and I want to talk about uh, why nutrition is important in pre and post surgery recovery. And ultimately, that became the book that we ended up publishing a year ago, called Heal.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was the foundation. That was what the book, it changed everything. That one injury ended up changing the way I look at it. And to this day, I'm grateful for that, because initially, while I was going through it, I was thinking, oh my God, this is just horrible. I got to go to have surgery. I have to wear this thing. But, it's life. You go through it and you come across different and more, maybe enlightened in different ways. So that's just part of life that I
Yeah.
think is really
I
precious.
want to know, did you go? I'm assuming the two friends who were hand surgeons
Yeah.
were
Oh, yeah.
witnessed this process, or was
You
it a
did.
matter of you going back after the fact and saying, "Guess what, guys?" Like, I don't mean to flip anybody off, but it was your middle finger.
It's so funny that I actually did send, because one of them is my really close friend, and he
Uh,
knows, because I would text him, say, "Look, this is what I'm gonna do." He goes, "That's really tough. You if you even move it like 2 millimeters, you're gonna have to go to square one. A lot of people give up on that. It's just easier to fix it this way."
yeah.
So he knows. He know. I told him, because he saw the progress. He goes, "You're
Right.
very determined. I'm happy you did that."
I'm
Most
sure. I'm
people,
sure he knew that about you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did tell him. I should tell the other guy that I saw for a consult, which I didn't. It was this old friend, but
You can send him the podcast.
I should. Yeah, I should.
Shout him out. Look, one of the most interesting things you mentioned in our discovery call is that many of your protocols are rooted in ICU and burn unit care. Like, that's pretty intense. And when we had that discovery call, I had never had the experience of being in ICU or even in a hospital. And now, as you know, I have had that experience, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I guess there are environments where the body is in extreme state of repair, and I have to tell you, the one thing that stood out to me, and I would love to get your take on it, is I'm I'm traumatized. Right? I have just had a very serious bike injury. I have damage to my throat. I had the raspiest voice, and I remember thinking, as absurd as this is, I wouldn't mind having a raspier, deeper voice for the rest of my life. So if this injury is permanent, I'm kind of okay with it. It was sexy,
Yeah.
and I had these fractured ribs, and I'm there, and I'm in this bed, and I'm hooked up to a machine. I'm getting liquids. They don't want me drinking or eating anything. Unbeknownst to them, I had been drinking and eating the entire time I was waiting to be seen.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm there overnight, and I kept thinking the one thing I need more than anything right now is rest.
Yeah.
I need to be able to sleep, and I could not believe how loud and disruptive that place was. And I probably got 2 hours of sleep that night. And the machine behind me kept beeping because I was moving my arm. Imagine moving your arm. And, just the screaming and the paging. And I was so shocked by that. And I'm like, I wanted to say, aren't you people all missing something here? Aren't you missing that the patient needs to rest? And just lying on this bed is not rest.
100%. And in the big picture, you don't want to spend too much time in the hospital, because people get
Right.
sick in the hospital. People get sick in the hospital. And it's not conducive to healing, as you were mentioning, because people in the hospital are, that, and it's not their fault, it's the system, right? You're in a
Right.
place where people need attention. They have to get their vitals checked every 4 hours. They need to have labs checked. And you're in
They
a
need scans.
scans. So all these people constantly come in and out and in and out and in and out of the room. And so it's definitely the goal of being in the hospital is to just get out of there as soon as you can. So that's really the
Yeah.
goal. And
I made that my mission, that's for sure.
100%, because you can't, like, as you were saying, if they're not going to do anything for you, if there's like a rib fracture, just requires time to heal. It
Yep.
will heal. The human body is pretty incredible. It knows how to do that. So being in a hospital, if there's nothing else that needs to happen, I would get up
And
soon.
and and I love that you brought up nutrition, and then we had talked about it, and I think that might have been going on in the back of my mind. I was thinking that too. Like, nothing they were feeding me was healthy,
Yeah.
or what I consider healthy. Like, it was all loaded with sugar, like fat and sugar. It like I have allergies. I have like really severe allergies that trigger migraines.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like dying for this one sandwich, and this guy, I forgot his name, Francois. He was my night nurse, and he was honestly amazing. And that morning I was starving because I hadn't eaten anything in like 12 hours. And he got me this incredible turkey sandwich and pudding. Like pudding? What? Was like 90 grams of sugar in pudding. Like I couldn't eat
Yeah.
that. And I wasn't, I took a couple bites of this sandwich and I realized that there was Parmesan cheese in it. I can't eat Parmesan cheese. I can't eat aged cheese. It's a migraine trigger. And it
Yeah.
was just so depressing. And I ended up having friends smuggle food in. Like they didn't want anybody bringing me food.
Yeah.
And they smuggled me a salad. And, I conned them into like the nurses into like closing my door and the curtains, saying that I needed to, relieve myself in that bottle, whatever that is. And
Yeah.
in those moments where I was pretending to relieve myself, I was eating. And I
Yeah.
was eating what I thought was nutritionally good for me. That's
Much
all
better.
I was doing. Yeah.
100%. And unfortunately, the entire hospital system, they don't realize how important the food is to the patient in that setting. But there is a setting where they're forced to think about it. And that
Hmm.
setting comes back to the ICU setting. And it
Hmm.
comes back to a setting where a patient is completely, let's say a biggest example would be someone who's got 30-40% surface body area burn,
Hmm.
and the body is in extreme position of repair. Just
Right.
imagine you have every cell in your body is saying, look, we need to take care of this and we need help. So it's a biological um, emergency.
Yeah.
And so there is tons of data, that's decades of data, that says, okay, no matter what ICU setting you go to, if it's a burn unit on an ICU setting, there is a nutritional team that comes on board, and they know what to do. They start the patient on a high protein diet because the body requires it. It's using so much energy, they need that. Every patient is started on high doses of vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, selenium, copper, um, and so they're actually giving them these things, and electrolytes, the whole thing. So there is a science that says, look, we have a patient who's in this setting. What do we do for them? So it's actually a prescription that's given by the nutritional team. Now the doctors that are there order it because they know that's part of the healing. They know
Right.
that patients end up doing better. And then what's fascinating is as soon as the patient, and the reason is we know, for example, a burn unit will need uh, a graft, sometimes a skin graft. They've done studies where patients who are not given vitamin C or don't have high protein diet, the graft doesn't take as much. They're more prone, if they don't have the antioxidants we talked about, they're more prone to infections. Hospital days are significantly longer if they're not given these things. So it's something that they know as soon as the patient comes out of the unit, now they're in a more stable position, then everyone else forgets about it. And the reason everyone
Right.
forgets about it is because most doctors that we talked about don't really know much about nutrition. They're focused
Hmm.
on giving patients, medications, and treating the symptom. For hypertension, for example, is treated by two medicine. If you're not doing two medicine, then third one. If it's still elevated, fourth. Not a single nutrition, like every person before they start any hypertensive medication should get a nutritional consult. 100%. So it's these silos of knowledge that the people who are controlling the medical field are not fully dialed into the importance of this. And that's
Yeah.
the matrix moment that I was telling you, because it's beautiful. It is incredibly beautiful once you start looking at the physiology of it, how like these cells are just a single cell in your body is just so magnificent. The way it just communicates with the other cells. I mean, look, we've been around. Life on this beautiful planet has been around for 4 billion years, right? We have 4 billion years of evolution that's taken place to bring us where we are today. So that's a fact. At heart of this evolutionary progress is survival, right? So survival says, how do we repair ourselves? How do we fix ourselves? So your body knows how to repair itself. And there is this beautiful dance that takes place. And, to survive is to give your body fuel, right? You have to give your body the right fuel to survive. And there's this beautiful dance that takes place. For example, when you take a bite out of a crispy, juicy apple, right? That you bite into it, your body says, okay, I know what's going to happen right now. I'm going to break this down, break the fibers, separate the vitamins that are part of this, and utilize them in my different ways. They become part of the cofactors to do many things. It's not just like a static thing that you ignore, because that process is so beautiful that I 100% think that it should be a requirement for every person going to medical school to have like 1 full year of nutrition, so they understand that aspect of it, so they can become it becomes a much better outcome, because we're ignoring that. So that's basically my journey into that, because I had to look at for myself, that rabbit hole took me to my ICU days in the burn unit when we were rounding on these patients. And I remember prescribing get the nutritional team involved and have them start all these things. And that protocol is very universal. You go to China, they do the same thing. You go to any ICU unit, they do the same thing. So that was the awe moment for me, that look, why are I'm doing controlled injury in this patient when I'm operating on him. It's not trauma, but it's controlled injury. Like every time I'm cutting someone, or we're lasering someone, or doing anything to their skin or face or anything, you are causing injury. And so the body goes into that repair mode. So the idea is, how do we make this better? How do we support that biology internally better? And so bring that information, bring that research data, and bring it into the active thing. And it starts with whole food. It starts with eating healthy, as you and I were talking about. You were trying to, your body, what works with it. So you weren't trying to, and these guys are saying, okay, don't eat this, or don't tell us, or it's just the hospital rules.
Here's the pudding. Enjoy your pudding.
Exactly.
I brought you two puddings, so I can have 95 grams of sugar laying in this bed.
Yes. It's just incredible. I think the entire field is just not looking at it the right way.
Yeah. And so this brings us, I think, to the perfect point where I want to introduce the brand that you created, right? Where you broke through your silo, right?
Yes.
To introduce nutrition. And that's what you're doing with Mendora. And I have to say that I'm obsessed with this powder. And the thing that really stood out to me is the intense complex of antioxidants in here. I'm a huge proponent of antioxidants. Like I'm so hooked on antioxidants. I take niacinamide orally in the morning.
Yeah.
But what I love about this is that it replaced several of the supplements I was taking. It replaced my astaxanthin. It replaced my vitamin C. It replaced my magnesium in the morning. I mean, I'm a chronic migraineur. Like, I can't get enough magnesium. And so I really appreciate the quality of this product.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah. I'm glad. It's basically what you have in your hand is the ICU protocol. We just took it and brought it into, because the ICU protocol was about recovery and repair. And I said, look, okay, everything that we're going to do, because what I was doing initially, and the reason this wasn't, I didn't wake up and say, I want to have a supplement, create a supplement. I woke up and said, look, what is the need? Because we're having my patients take 12 different supplements that I think are essential in their recovery. And the problem with it was that most of the supplements are, you have to worry about the source that you get. You have to make
Right.
sure that the dosing is accurate. Very important about the dosing. And you have to make sure that it's clean. Doesn't have artificial ingredients, doesn't have any fillers. It's third party tested. So that journey, I said, okay, maybe I should just see if we can get this formulated for our patients and we have them take it for that, because they were taking all these different supplements. So I found this amazing manufacturer here in the United States, and I said, look, if I'm going to work with you guys, I want to make sure that all these requirements are met before we do this. That means all the things I said: clean ingredient, third party tested, making sure everything's clinically um, dosed. So that was the initiation of that whole process. But and I think, certainly it's the skin repair formula, and it's because in our field there are three targets for this demographic. One is that peri-procedural patients, because patients who are having surgery before and after surgery, their body, as we talked about, is in a high demand state. And so it started as that. And then you look at two different groups that are also, that happens. And one is that there is a concept called the collagen cliff that happens during perimenopausal period, and it's because of reduction in estrogen. So every year we all lose 1% of our total collagen as we get older, but during that cliff, because of the reduction in estrogen, you get this cliff that happens. So collagen goes significantly down, ceramides go down, hyaluronic acid goes down, skin gets dehydrated. So that is a major gap that this formulation addresses in that way, because it supports it in that way.
Yeah.
Still, for perimenopausal women, hormone replacement is the way to go, because it's number one. Obviously, they have to be evaluated to be the right candidate, but so that's one thing. And then another group, we actually submitted a paper for publication. It's something that I'm seeing more and more every day, is the Ozempic face group. It's the GLP-1 group. And first of all, no bad thing about, I think GLP-1s do work there. It's a miracle drug because it addresses, diabetes. It addresses many things. Sometimes these patients are on like 15 pills and they just take one medicine and it just like helps them. And, certainly they do have some anti-inflammatory properties that we're starting to understand. But one of the things that happens to everyone when they go through a rapid weight loss is that the skin undergoes this massive change. So it's not just volume loss, but the skin actually goes through this remodeling phase as if it was injured, as if it was going through like something major happening. And the reason for that is the stimulus that are going on are significantly reduced. And this is the paradox. The paradox is a patient who's on a GLP-1 protocol is calorie deficient. So some of these people are taking about 800 to 1200 because they're not hungry, right? About 800 to 1200 calories a day, and all of a sudden, also some of them change the diet, the eating habits, and have a balanced diet. But it's hard to do that when you're busy living life. Obviously, all these things are happening, and so the nutritional gap, especially in vitamin D, especially in some macro proteins, electrolytes, omega 3s, it becomes deficient. So the antioxidants are deficient in them. And so it's important because the paradox is that these people are calorie deficient, not eating as much, and the skin is at a state where it needs the repair it needs. So that's why it's very common. And so we describe this condition in a skin, looking at it from a perspective of a skin. Most of these patients actually come in complaining of looking older. They are
Right.
thin,
Yeah.
but they look older. And you
Yeah.
look at them and say, okay, is it just the volume loss? No, because the skin is different. The skin, they've done biopsies where they look at the skin when someone goes through a major weight loss, is that the skin actually is made up of collagen 3, which is, it's saying that, look, we're just trying to remodel. Collagen type 1 is the mature collagen that we have. Collagen 3 is just the beginning immature kind of primary collagen that over time it becomes it remodels to collagen type 1. But they see that they're in a state of that repair, which is fascinating. So I think it's important nutritionally. So if in that sense, to be able to address that. So skin is under how I look at this is a category called the skin recovery nutrition, because during these things you need to support it in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we can even move forward without talking about the next inflection point, which is the open heart surgery, where you actually had the opportunity to put all of this to work for you.
Yes. So it's an interesting, again, another one of those points in my life that I was a big surprise. And this was the day that, so long story short, about a year and a half ago, I was doing some biohacking, trying to just like see what are my, different biological markers and how old is my biological age. I exercised, ate healthy, because I had just finished the manuscript of the book Heal, and I was really proud of it that we're going to submit it. And during that process, I found out that there was one marker. Everything was, the good news was that I biologically I was 37, but there was, which I'm not, I'm much older than that. But I but I found out that there's this one marker that's significantly, it's like this outlier, like sitting up really high. And that led into, I talked to one of my friends who's a cardiologist. He goes, look, this is kind of strange. You're healthy. You don't have any symptoms. You don't have issues. We should just look up this thing. By the way, the marker is ApoB protein, which is, it looks at, we traditionally just look at LDL and cholesterol. But so this is a new kind of realm that we're looking into, because my LDL and cholesterol has always been fine. Mm-hmm. So I ended up doing some tests, which showed that I had 100% blockage of my LAD. LAD is this artery called the widowmaker. And it's interesting because most people in that situation with 100% blockage are dead. They find that, and most people are not, you just are walking, all of a sudden you die. So when you hear somebody goes to sleep, that's what the widowmaker is. Mm-hmm. So I went and did further studies, and they said, look, this thing, I can't believe you're like, how are you even walking? I said, dude, I am not only walking, I do exercise every day. This cannot be true. I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to go do a stress test. So don't do a stress test. You're going to die.
Right.
But no, I'm going to do it, and I'll prove it to you that I'm okay. So I did the stress test, and it showed that during really high exercise intensity towards the end, I had some EKG changes. And those EKG changes said, look, we have, I was lucky that I did exercise. I was lucky that I didn't smoke, because if I smoked, I would be dead. I was lucky that, I typically ate healthy. This is a genetic condition that like hit. Um, so that required open heart surgery, and there was no way out of it. And it's interesting because the day I had my meeting with the publisher on the book, I said, "Look, we have to pause here because I'm going to be the
No.
patient."
Right.
And she goes, "What are you talking?" I said, "Yes, I can't put popsicle sticks on this one." I, so so I said, "Why don't we hold off on this? Let me go. I gotta have surgery." I was on a wait list for the surgery. I found probably one of the best surgeons. Very lucky to have found him, and ended up going through that experience, which was a whole different level. It was, for the first time, now I was the patient for the
Mm.
first time. And what's really interesting is that when you sometimes these kind of things happen, you just have to stop and reflect and say, what is what is the universe saying? Like,
Yeah.
I I became obsessed with a finger injury healing, and that led to me understanding nutrition and how that changed my practice. And now I need to have this surgery. And another thing that happened during that injury kind of a process was that I said, look, everything I look says two things: nutrition, and number two, mind body. So
Mm.
meditation is a big part of it. And why don't we partner up with a couple of these people, and we can just make a free meditation guide just for pre and post surgery. Just put it on YouTube, let people use it if they're having surgery. So that was already planned, made. And so I actually ended up using it. And I remember the night, because I was on a wait list, they called, the hospital called and said, look, you're on tomorrow. Just want to let you know you're on tomorrow. You're going. And I remember I've never in my life been so scared. Like I said,
Mm.
oh my God, this is it. Because I've assisted in this surgery when I was an intern. I know the complications rate. I know 1% of people can die from this surgery. You can have AFib, you can have stroke, you can have infection. You may never make it. You may be paralyzed half of your body. These are all the things going through my head.
Yeah.
And, but the day I remember my wife was driving me to the hospital at 4 in the morning, and I said, Catherine, I I just want to. Why don't we listen to this one meditation that we made? It was for this purpose. Let's do it. So we put it on, and it was so calming. It was so incredible. And I turned around because it's a guided meditation. Turned around once the thing was over, because she was nervous. Obviously, she didn't know the uncertainty. So we both looked at each other and we said, we have to put this on YouTube. Let's just make it available for everyone. So that really changed that perspective of being on the other side. So long story short, most people, again, I was optimized because I was doing all these things. I was taking doing all the preparation for the surgery. I was in the hospital only for 4 days. Most average patients who have this surgery stay in for like 10 days plus. Um, I was walking. I was this sort of. I knew all the things that I had to do, and I think that helped me a lot in terms of my recovery. And again, reflection says, look, in order for you to become the next version of you, whatever that is, you have to go through this point of uncertainty. You have to go through this process of struggle, because it is like, this is, in my life, I've never gone through anything this hard. This was a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, and that changed me. That changed the way I look at a lot of things, and even deeper, because now as a patient, I have a certain appreciation for that, because I've always thought that as surgeons, we're really privileged to take care of patients. We're privileged. But this made it even next level in terms of
Right.
understanding it, full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And you've made so many points that have really touched me. And you're right. You kind of have to go through the struggle and reflect on the struggle. And it reminds me that I need to get back to doing my morning meditations because it's been chaos, right? Like moving across country by myself, well, with the cat. Um, it's
Yes.
really upended my life. And, I have this opportunity here now in LA to reset things. And it feels like a full reset, right? Like, and I just need to feel grounded and really begin to reflect on all of that again. And I do feel grateful that I at least have the opportunity and have always had the opportunity really to take the reins, right? And guide my own life and acknowledge the inflection points and the moments that move you forward and grow you spiritually. So I really appreciate so many of the things that you've brought up.
Thank you. No, 100%. And then you came here on top of it. You got into a bike accident. So, I mean, life is just like, you plan life and all of a sudden something happens. And
Life is lifing. Life is lifing.
exactly.
Yeah. Um, Dr. Parsa, I want to just, move on to the lightning round, the fun
Yeah.
part of the episode.
Yeah.
Not like we haven't been having fun, right? That's kind of crazy. But the it's just a couple of questions you can answer as succinctly or expound on things if you like. The first, something you believed early in your career that you no longer believe.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I feel that all my career, I thought that what I did in the operating room was the most important thing I can do for this patient. Um, which, don't get me wrong, it's important, obviously.
Hmm.
But as I've gone through my journey, and that I realized that there is so much more to this story, because the holistic of it is that uh, when you approach it from a different perspective, that I am not the most important thing in this thing, the patient is the most important thing, and they are what they do and how I educate them and how they proceed with it is the most important thing. So that's a big turning point in my. And I talk to all these surgeons that are just starting. I always tell them, look, you have to look at it differently. Nutrition is important. Meditation is important. Mind, body is important. Movement is important.
Mm.
All of these things come together. So, yeah.
I think the next question is kind of fun.
Okay.
The one food you'll never fully give up, no matter how unhealthy it is.
Let me think about that. That's a surprise. Let me think. I would say,
Yeah.
so I've given up my favorite food. I used to love hamburgers. I don't eat red meat anymore. So I have to stick with that. I don't eat it. But chocolate, and especially ice cream, is something that
Mm-hmm.
I have to get my fix on. I mean, it's just something that brings a smile to me. I think when I think about it, it's something I enjoy with eating it with my kids and everything. So ice cream, I would have to say.
Okay, ice cream it is. a a daily ritual that keeps you grounded.
100% meditation. I used to
Amazing.
I used to do guided meditations, and this is something actually I started like a week after I was discharged. I started doing transcendental meditation. For any of the listeners, this is a
Wow.
transcendental meditation is a course. It's a nonprofit. It's not a cult or sect or anything. It's just a nonprofit foundation that they teach you the practice of this meditation. It takes like 4 courses, and then you can go as many times as you can. But it's been life changing, and it's been grounding. I feel more present. I do that 2 times a day, 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon. And it's just been life-changing for me.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, listen, this was an incredible conversation. I appreciate you. Have you done your meditation for the afternoon yet?
No, I'm teed up to start right now after
Yes. Please do it right after we wrap. I
And
love that.
Carmine, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me here today. So
Yeah, this is so fun. Thank you.
welcome back to LA, and
Thank you.
hopefully we get to see you sometime soon.
I would love that. I would totally love that. All right, we're going to wrap up. I appreciate you. I'm going to drop the links to this incredible supplement into the show notes, and I'll actually drop a link too to your book Heal, so listeners can check that out. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Parsa. This was such a great conversation.
Thank you, Carmine. Pleasure being with you today. Thank you.
All right. Ciao.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Skincarma Pod. Find more insights, real talk, and reviews of my favorite skincare products on the Skincarma blog at skincarma.com. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review this episode. It helps me to reach more listeners. Ciao.